The rain was not water, it was glass, sharpened by a wind that howled with the grief of 1,000 lost souls. It sliced through the threadbare wool of my coat, seeking skin and bone with a hunter's precision. Below the city of Ethel was a constellation of cruel, glittering lights, each one a window into a life that was not mine, a life of warmth, of safety, of belonging. I had none of those things. I had only the biting cold, the ache in my empty stomach, and a secret tucked so deep inside me, it had nearly fossilized. I was an omega without a pack, a shifter without a shift, a voice without a sound. My wolf, the very core of my being, was a sleeping thing, a void where a fire should have been. The shame of it was a physical weight, heavier than the storm lashing my back. It had been my crime and my sentence, the reason I was here, haunting the edges of a world that had cast me out. The scent of ozone, wet concrete, and my own fear mingled in the air, a pathetic perfume of desperation. Tonight, the city felt like a beast with its jaws wide open, and I was falling into its throat. Something was about to break. I stumbled, my numb fingers scraping against the cold, polished stone of a wall that seemed to rise into the clouds. My gaze traveled up, past floors of dark glass that drank the lightning and reflected nothing. Draven Tower. The name was a whisper of power on the city's lips, a place of myth. It was the heart of the beast, the den of the alpha who ruled this territory with an iron will and a silence more terrifying than any threat. Lucian Draven. Even thinking his name felt like a trespass. A wave of dizziness washed over me, my vision swimming with black spots. I was so cold, so tired. The instinct to survive, the one primal thing I had left, was sputtering like a dying candle. I pressed my forehead against the stone, the chill of it a shocking, grounding pain. A sob, dry and silent, tore through my chest. It was here, at the foot of his untouchable fortress, that I would finally fall. My legs gave out, and I crumpled onto the rain-slicked marble steps of the entrance, a discarded doll left for the storm to claim. The massive glass doors slid open with a soundless hiss. Light, warm, and golden, spilled out, framing a silhouette that blotted out the world. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against the symphony of the storm. He was taller than the legends claimed, broader. Dressed in a suit so black it seemed woven from shadows. He stood with an unnerving stillness, a predator watching its prey. Lucian Draven did not move. He simply was. The rain did not dare touch him. The wind seemed to hold its breath. I could smell him from where I lay, a scent that cut through the storm's fury, with impossible clarity. It was the scent of old-growth forests after a fire, of rich, dark earth, of ozone and something else, something wild and fiercely masculine that spoke directly to the dormant thing inside me. It stirred, a faint, forgotten tremor. His eyes found mine in the darkness. They were not brown or blue or any human color I could name. They were the color of molten gold, glowing with a faint internal light, the eyes of a true alpha. They swept over me once, a clinical, possessive assessment that missed nothing, the torn coat, the bare feet, the tremor in my limbs, the hollow desperation in my soul. I expected disgust, pity perhaps, or most likely, the cold indifference of a god to a dying insect. I got none of those things. His gaze held mine, and the world fell away. There was no storm, no city, no cold. There was only the weight of that look, a pressure so immense it felt like a physical touch. He took a slow step forward, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the wet marble. He stopped just before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He crouched, balancing on the balls of his feet with a fluid grace that was utterly inhuman. His face was all sharp angles and unforgiving lines, a masterpiece of brutal beauty. A faint scar cut through his left eyebrow, a silver slash against tanned skin, the only mar on his perfection. It spoke of a violence I couldn't comprehend. You're on my territory, cool, he said. His voice was not a shout, not a growl, but a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through the stone and up into my bones. It was the sound of bedrock settling, of a mountain speaking. I tried to answer, to apologize, to beg, but my throat was frozen shut, the words trapped behind a wall of fear and awe. I could only stare, my breath catching. He reached out and I flinched, my body tensing for a blow, but his fingers did not strike. They brushed a strand of wet hair from my cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle, yet searingly hot against my icy skin. The contact was electric. A jolt of pure primal energy shot through me, awakening every nerve ending. The dormant wolf inside me, the silent, sleeping ghost, stretched a limb for the first time in years. It whimpered, a soft, questioning sound in the depths of my soul. His golden eyes narrowed, a flicker of something, surprise, recognition, crossing his features. His gaze intensified, as if he were looking past my skin, past my bones, and seeing the broken thing I kept hidden. "What is your name?" he commanded, not asked. My lips parted, but only a shaky, soundless breath escaped. "Ielari," I finally managed to whisper, the name a strange foreign thing on my own tongue. He said nothing for a long moment, his thumb stroking my cheekbone in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. It was a gesture of ownership, not comfort. "Elara Iwai," he repeated, tasting the name. It sounded different in his mouth, not the name of a broken omega, but the name of something precious, something he had found. He rose to his full height, a towering shadow against the storm. "Get up." I tried, but my limbs wouldn't obey. I was a tangle of shivering weakness. With a sigh that sounded more like impatience than pity, he bent down again. In one smooth, effortless motion, he scooped me into his arms. I gasped, my head falling against the solid wall of his chest. His suit was damp, but underneath, he was a furnace. The scent of him was overwhelming now, wrapping around me like a blanket, seeping into my skin. It was intoxicating and terrifying. It smelled like home, a home I'd never had. He carried me through the silent, opulent lobby, his stride long and sure. No one stopped him. The lone security guard at a marble desk simply lowered his eyes, his posture one of absolute deference. We entered a private elevator, all dark wood and polished brass. The doors slid shut, encasing us in a silence so profound I could hear the frantic beat of my own heart and the steady, powerful rhythm of his. The penthouse was less a home and more a kingdom in the sky. One entire wall was a sheet of glass, showcasing the storm-ravaged city below. Lightning spider-webbed across the clouds, illuminating a space of stark, beautiful emptiness. There were no photographs, no clutter, just a few pieces of dark, modern furniture, a fireplace with a low, crackling fire, and an ocean of polished hardwood floor. The air was warm, clean, and saturated with his scent, his power. I was in the very center of his world, a stray animal brought into the predator's den. He set me down on a sprawling black leather sofa that was softer than anything I had ever touched. I immediately felt small and filthy, a stain on his perfect world. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to shrink. He disappeared for a moment, returning with a thick cashmere blanket. He didn't just give it to me, he draped it over my shoulders himself, his fingers brushing the nape of my neck. The casual touch sent another shiver through me, this one having nothing to do with the cold. "Stay, Kumal, stay," he commanded, and walked toward the windows, his back to me. He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching the storm as if it were a mildly amusing show he had commanded for his own entertainment. I didn't move. I huddled under the blanket, the luxurious fabric smelling of him, and watched his reflection in the glass. Who was this man? Why had he brought me here? Alphas of his stature didn't show kindness to lone broken omegas. They used them, or they broke them further. There was no charity in our world, only power, and I had none. After an eternity, he spoke, his voice low and calm, not turning from the window. "There is a room, down the hall to the left. You will find clothes, a shower, food will be brought." I found my voice, a reedy, trembling thing. Why? His reflection's eyes met mine in the glass. The golden light in them seemed to intensify. "Because the storm is not a place for you." He said it like a simple fact of the universe, like gravity or the rising of the sun, as if my place was now defined by his will. "You will stay the night." It was an order, not an offer, a declaration. For tonight, I belonged to his charity, to his whim. I should have been terrified. Part of me was, but another deeper part of me, the wolf part, the omega part, felt a strange unfamiliar calm settle over it. For the first time in years, I was warm, I was sheltered, I was seen. I did as I was told, my legs unsteady as I walked down the hall he'd indicated. The room was larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in, with another wall of glass and a bed that looked like a cloud. On it lay a simple gray t-shirt and a pair of black sweatpants. They were his. I knew it the moment I touched them, the fabric imbued with his scent. In the adjoining bathroom, a marble palace with a shower bigger than my last bedroom, I washed away the grime of the city, of my desperate life. I scrubbed until my skin was raw, but I couldn't wash away the feeling of his touch, or the scent that now clung to me from the clothes I wore. Dressed in his things, dwarfed by them, I felt branded. A tray of food was waiting for me on a small table, a simple meal of roasted chicken, bread, and soup. Yet it was the most decadent feast I'd ever seen. I ate mechanically, my mind racing. One night, that's what he'd said. In the morning, I would be back in the storm. I crawled into the massive bed. The sheets cool and crisp against my skin. Sleep should have been impossible, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. But exhaustion, deep and profound, pulled me under. Wrapped in the lingering scent of the alpha who had saved me, the dormant creature in my soul sighed, curled up, and fell into the first peaceful sleep it had known in an age. My last conscious thought was of golden eyes and a low, rumbling voice that sounded like a promise. When I awoke, it was to silence. The storm had passed, and brilliant morning sun streamed through the windows, making dust motes dance in the air like tiny diamonds. For a blissful moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came flooding back. The rain, the cold, the tower, him. Panic flared. I sat up, clutching the sheets. I was alone. The food tray was gone. Had he already thrown me out? Was I supposed to just leave? I slipped out of bed, his clothes hanging off my frame, and crept out of the room. The penthouse was deathly quiet. I padded on bare feet across the cold hardwood floor into the main living area. And there he was. He stood exactly where he had the night before, a sentinel guarding his kingdom from the sky. He was dressed not in a suit, but in simple black trousers and a fitted Henley that stretched across the powerful muscles of his back and shoulders. He was holding a tablet, his head bent as he read. He didn't seem to notice me at first. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. I can go," I whispered, my voice hoarse. He didn't look up. His thumb just moved, swiping across the screen. A muscle in his jaw tightened. "It's too late for that," he said, his voice dangerously soft, a predator's purr. He turned slowly, and the full force of his presence hit me again. In the light of day, he was even more intimidating, more intensely real. His golden eyes were not warm like the sun. They were sharp, calculating, and they pinned me in place. Without a word, he turned the tablet toward me. My breath hitched. My world stopped. On the screen was a photograph, taken from a distance, grainy from the rain but unmistakable. It was him, from the night before, lifting me from the steps of his building. My face was turned up toward his, my expression one of utter desperation and awe. His was bent toward me, his features hard with a fierce, possessive focus. We were framed by the storm, caught in a moment of raw, dramatic intensity. But it was the headline above the picture that stole the air from my lungs. Splashed across the top of the city's biggest digital gossip column, in bold, screaming letters, it read, "The Draven Wolf finds his mate. Billionaire Alpha Lucian Draven's secret Omega Bride revealed." The words didn't just register, they detonated. Secret Omega Bride. My universe, already a fragile, fractured thing, shattered into a million glittering shards of pure terror. The air thickened, turning to sludge in my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My vision tunneled until the only thing that existed was the glowing screen and the impossible, soul-stealing lie it proclaimed. A choked, desperate sound tore from my throat, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. My hand flew to my mouth, pressing hard against my lips as if to physically hold back the scream that was clawing its way up my esophagus. My legs, which had felt so weak the night before, now felt like they had dissolved entirely. I swayed, my knuckles white where I gripped the edge of the sofa for support. "No," I breathed, the word a ragged whisper of denial. "No, this is a mistake. A lie." Lucian lowered the tablet, his expression unreadable. The morning sun streaming through the window behind him cast him in silhouette, a dark, imposing monolith of calm in the center of my storm. He moved with a deliberate, lethal grace, setting the device on a low table. The soft click of it on the wood was like a gunshot in the crushing silence. "In my world," he said, his voice a low, chillingly steady rumble, "a publicly perceived truth is more powerful than a privately held one. This is now a truth. You have to deny it." My voice was thin, reedy, pathetic even to my own ears. "Tell them it's not true. Tell them I was just a stray you took in from the rain. Anything." I looked at him, pleading with my eyes, trying to convey the sheer magnitude of the catastrophe this was for me. I was a nobody, a wolfless omega, a disgrace. The very idea of being mated to an alpha of his caliber was not just absurd, it was blasphemy. Packs were built on strength, on lineage, on power. Tying himself to me, even in a lie, would be an anchor around his neck. It would ruin him. He simply watched me, his golden eyes analytical, missing nothing of my frantic, spiraling panic. There was no anger in them, no surprise. Only a deep, unnerving stillness, as if he were observing a fascinating but predictable chemical reaction. "A denial would be a sign of weakness," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It would suggest that I can be caught off guard, that my security is flawed. It would invite questions from my board, from rival packs, from every wolf who scents an opportunity. A denial would feed the fire. I do not feed fires, Alara. I let them burn out, or I use them to forge something stronger." He took a step toward me. My dormant wolf, which had been cowering in the back of my mind, flinched. His proximity was a physical force, a gravitational pull that warped the air around him. The scent of him, that intoxicating blend of forest, fire, and power, was stronger now, coiling around me, seeping into my senses, clouding my panic with something primal and confusing. "You don't understand," I whispered, shaking my head frantically. I'm nothing. I'm no one. This lie will damage you. When they find out what I am." The words died on my tongue, the shame of them a gag in my throat. Broken, wolfless, a faulty omega. "I understand perfectly," he countered, his voice dropping lower, becoming a hypnotic murmur that vibrated in my chest. "I understand that for the first time in months, the vultures on my board are silent. I understand that Marcus, my beta, has informed me that 3 rival alphas who were sniffing at my borders have suddenly withdrawn. I understand that the world believes I have secured my line, taken a mate, and solidified my power." He paused, his gaze burning into me. "They believe I have shown my heart, and in doing so have hidden my fist. This lie, as you call it, has solved problems I have been dealing with for a year. all before the sun has fully risen. My mind reeled. He wasn't seeing a disaster. He was seeing an asset, a tool, a convenience. I wasn't a person in this equation. I was a solution. The cold, ruthless logic of it was more terrifying than any rage would have been. He stopped just a foot away from me. I had to crane my neck to look up at him. I was a sapling at the foot of an ancient, unshakable redwood. This is a contract, Alara, written not in ink, but in headlines. You will play the part of my mate. I can't, I pleaded, the words tumbling out in a rush. I don't know how. I will fail. I will disgrace you. You will not fail, he said, the certainty in his voice and salute. Because I will not allow it. Your role is simple. You will live here. You will wear the clothes I provide. You will stand by my side when required. And you will remain silent. Silence is something you seem to excel at. The barb, though spoken calmly, struck deep. It was a reminder of my weakness, of the voice I could not properly use, of the howl I did not possess. He saw me for exactly what I was, and yet he was still choosing this path. It didn't make sense. And in return, I choked out, my survival instinct forcing the question. In return, he said, his golden eyes seeming to glow with an inner fire, you will have a life you cannot even imagine. This penthouse, food, protection. No one in this city will ever dare to harm you again. The name Draven will be your shield and your sword. You will be safe from the storms, Alara. All of them. Safety. The word hung in the air between us, a tempting, poisonous fruit. For years, every waking moment had been a struggle for safety. Safety from the cold, from hunger, from the contempt of other packs, from the crushing loneliness of my own existence. He was offering me everything I had ever craved on a silver platter, but the price was my life, my identity, my freedom. A gilded cage was still a cage, but did I even have a life to give up? Or just a miserable existence? He must have seen the conflict warring in my eyes, the flicker of desperate yearning battling with my fear. He reached out, not fast, but with a slow, deliberate motion that gave me ample time to retreat. I was frozen to the spot. His fingers, warm and calloused, brushed my jaw before cupping my chin, tilting my face up to his. His touch was firm, proprietary. It wasn't a question or a comfort. It was a claim. There is another reason this works, he murmured, his thumb stroking softly against my skin, sending a cascade of traitorous sparks down my spine. My wolf is not displeased by this arrangement. His gaze dropped to my lips for a fraction of a second, and the air crackled with a sudden intense heat. The omega inside me, the part I thought was dead and buried, responded to his words, to his touch, with a deep resonant purr of submission and acknowledgement that shocked me to my core. It was a feeling I had never experienced, a profound sense of rightness, a fitting, of being seen by the one who mattered. His eyes snapped back to mine, narrowing slightly. He had felt it. I knew he had. He had sensed that flicker of response from the broken, silent creature within me. A ghost of a smile, a dangerous, predatory curve, touched his lips. It seems my wolf is not the only one who finds this lie convenient. He let me go, and the absence of his touch left my skin feeling cold and strangely empty. He turned away, walking back toward the vast window that overlooked his domain. This is no longer a negotiation, he said, his back to me once more. It is a statement of fact. You are Alara Draven now. The world will be watching. We will give them a story they will not question. My mind was a chaotic symphony of protest and a strange, terrifying acceptance. This was insane. It was a fantasy, a dangerous charade that would inevitably collapse. But another part of me, the part that had been starving and freezing on his doorstep less than 12 hours ago, whispered that this fantasy was better than any reality I had ever known. I swallowed hard, the act of it feeling monumental. What happens now? He turned his head slightly, his profile sharp and powerful against the bright morning sky. Now you become her." His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "The Luna of the Draven Pack. And tonight, the pack elders are coming. They expect to meet my bride." The floor dropped out from under me. It was one thing to be a name in a headline, a ghost in his penthouse. It was another thing entirely to be presented to a pack. To his pack. To the wolves who followed him, who revered him. They would be alphas, betas, powerful shifters who would scent my weakness in a heartbeat. They would smell the lack of a wolf on me, the taint of disgrace. They would know I was a fraud. They would tear me apart. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. "No, I can't. They'll know. Lucian, they will know what I am." "They will know what I tell them you are," he corrected me, turning to face me fully. The full, uncompromising force of his will washed over me, leaving no room for doubt, no space for fear. "You are mine, my mate, my choice. My word is law in this pack. Anyone who questions it answers to me." He walked to an intercom panel on the wall, his movements economical and precise. "Marcus." He spoke into it, his voice calm. "She is awake. Be here in 1 hour. Bring what is necessary. The elders arrive at 7. He didn't wait for a reply. He knew he would be obeyed. He turned back to me, his golden eyes pinning me in place. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond cold calculation in their depths. It was a glint of challenge, of possession, of a hunger that had nothing to do with power and everything to do with something far more ancient and untamable. "Go and wash your face, Ilara," he commanded softly, yet the order resonated with the power of a roar. "Your new life has just begun." I moved like an automaton, my limbs disconnected from my mind. His command, "Go and wash your face," echoed in the silent, cavernous space of the penthouse. It was such a simple, mundane instruction, yet it carried the weight of a royal decree. It was the first link in a chain he was forging around me. I turned and walked back to the palatial bedroom, each step a surrender. The bathroom was a sanctuary of cold white marble and gleaming chrome. I stared at my reflection in the vast, brightly lit mirror. The girl staring back was a ghost, her face pale and pinched, her eyes wide with a terror so profound it looked like a permanent part of her. Her hair was a tangled mess from a night of restless sleep, and she was swimming in the soft, dark fabric of his clothes. His scent clung to the cotton, a constant, intimate reminder of who was in control. "You are Ilara Draven now." The name felt like a costume, one that was too heavy and too large for me to wear. I turned on the tap, the sound of rushing water unnaturally loud. I splashed the cold water on my face again and again, the shock of it a welcome distraction from the spiraling chaos in my thoughts. I wasn't just afraid of the elders, I was afraid of him, of the unnerving calm with which he had upended my entire existence, of the way his golden eyes seemed to see straight through me to the broken, whimpering thing I kept hidden. And most terrifying of all, I was afraid of the part of me that had responded to his touch, the dormant omega that had purred in recognition of its alpha. It was a betrayal of my own misery, a surrender I hadn't known I was capable of. An hour. He had given me 1 hour before his beta arrived to begin my transformation. I felt like a lamb being groomed for slaughter. I dried my face on a towel that was softer than any blanket I'd ever owned and walked back into the main living area, my heart a frantic, trapped bird against my ribs. Lucian was on a call, his back to me as he stood before the window. He spoke in low, clipped tones, a language of power and command. I couldn't make out the words, only the deep, resonant timbre of his voice. Every syllable was imbued with an authority that expected, and undoubtedly received, absolute obedience. He was a king surveying his kingdom, and I was the newest, most perplexing acquisition in his collection. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, wrapping my arms around myself. The gilded cage was beautiful. From this height, the city was a breathtaking tapestry of steel and light, a sprawling testament to ambition and power. But I could feel the invisible bars pressing in on me, the silence, The luxury, the isolation, it was all part of the trap. He had promised me safety from the storm, but I was beginning to realize he was the storm, a force of nature far more powerful and unpredictable than any weather. Exactly 1 hour later, the elevator chimed its soft, melodic arrival. Lucian ended his call without a word of farewell and turned to face the doors. I tensed, my muscles coiling tight. A man stepped out. He was older than Lucian, perhaps in his late 40s, with silver dusting the dark hair at his temples. He was tall and lean, with a face that was more kind than handsome, etched with the fine lines of worry and responsibility. But his posture was military straight, and his eyes, a calm, intelligent gray, held the unmistakable sharpness of a wolf. This was Marcus, his beta. He carried 2 large, expensive-looking garment bags and a leather case. His scent was different from Lucian's. It was grounding, stable, the scent of aged leather, dry earth, and unwavering loyalty. He exuded competence. Marcus's gaze went first to Lucian, a quick, deferential nod. Alpha. Then his eyes found me. They swept over my small, huddled form on the massive sofa, taking in the borrowed clothes, the bare feet, the fear radiating from me in waves. There was no judgment in his expression, only a quiet, thorough assessment. He was cataloging me, filing me away. For a moment his gaze held mine, and I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "This is Alara," Lucian said, his voice leaving no room for questions. It was not an introduction, it was a pronouncement. "Luna," Marcus replied, his voice a smooth, respectful baritone. He inclined his head toward me. The title, spoken aloud by someone else, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "The elders are confirmed for 7, Lucian continued, turning his attention to the business at hand. "I want no mistakes. She needs to look the part." "Everything is here," Marcus assured him. "Stylists are on standby, but I thought it best to start with the essentials first, to avoid overwhelming the Luna." Again that flicker of consideration. He understood I was a wild animal caught in a snare, and that too much prodding would make me bolt. Lucian nodded, a sharp, decisive gesture. "Proceed." He didn't leave. He moved to a chair in the corner of the room, a dark throne from which he could observe the entire process. He picked up his tablet, but I knew he wasn't reading. His attention, his entire powerful, predatory focus, was on us, on me. Marcus approached me with a careful, non-threatening slowness. He laid the garment bags on the sofa beside me. "Luna," he began, his tone gentle but firm. "We don't have much time. The clothes are in the first bag." The fabrics were chosen for comfort as well as appearance. The alpha was specific. My fingers trembled as I reached for the zipper. Inside was a dress the color of a midnight sky. It was silk, so fine and fluid it felt like liquid starlight in my hands. It was simple, elegant, and impossibly expensive. It was the kind of dress a woman who belonged in this world would wear. "There is a bathroom through there," Marcus gestured. "Please, we can handle the rest when you are ready." Under the silent, watchful gaze of the alpha in the corner, I took the dress and retreated. In the bathroom, I stripped off the comfort of his clothes, feeling a pang of loss. The scent of him had been a strange, anchoring presence. The silk dress slithered over my skin, cool and whispering. It fit perfectly, skimming my body in a way that was modest yet undeniably alluring. It had a low, draped back, exposing the knobs of my spine. It felt like a vulnerability, a target. When I emerged, Marcus was waiting with the leather case open on the table. It was filled with velvet trays of jewelry. Diamonds glittered like captive stars. Emeralds glowed with a deep green fire, and sapphires held the same dark blue as the dress. It was a king's ransom. "The alpha thought the sapphires would be appropriate," Marcus said, his voice a low murmur. He lifted a necklace, a delicate platinum chain from which a single, perfect teardrop-shaped sapphire hung, surrounded by a halo of tiny diamonds. before Marcus could move to place it around my neck. Lucian was there. He had crossed the room in utter silence, a shadow detaching itself from the corner. He took the necklace from his beta's hands, his fingers brushing Marcus's in a silent dismissal. Marcus stepped back immediately, his face a mask of neutrality. Lucian stood behind me. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I could feel the heat of his body, could smell the intoxicating scent of his power. He was so close, his chest almost brushing my bare back. My skin pebbled with goosebumps. The dormant Omega within me stirred, awake and attentive, every nerve ending firing with a mixture of terror and a deep, primal yearning. His large, warm hands moved to my neck. His fingers were deft as he worked the clasp of the necklace. They were calloused, strong, the hands of a wolf, not a billionaire who sat in boardrooms. His knuckles brushed the sensitive skin at my nape, and a shiver racked my body. The sapphire settled in the hollow of my throat, its weight cool and heavy, a brand, a collar. He didn't step away. His hands came to rest on my bare shoulders, his thumbs stroking the fragile bones there. I could see our reflection in the dark glass of the window. Me, small and slight in the midnight blue dress, the diamond and sapphire glittering at my throat. Him, a towering, dark presence behind me, his golden eyes burning in the reflection, his hands holding me in place. We looked like a predator and its prey. We looked like a king and his queen. We looked like a lie. "Better," he rumbled, his voice a low vibration that traveled from his hands, through my shoulders, and into my very soul. He leaned in closer, his lips near my ear, his breath a warm puff of air against my skin. "You look the part. Now you must smell it." My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought he meant perfume, but he lowered his head, his face burying in the curve where my neck met my shoulder. I gasped, my entire body going rigid. He inhaled deeply, his nose pressed against my skin, and the sound was a low, possessive growl of satisfaction. He was scenting me, openly, marking me with his breath, with his proximity. He was layering his powerful alpha scent over my own faint, fearful one, an act of primal ownership so profound it made my knees weak. "Let them smell me on you," he whispered, his voice a raw, husky thing that sent fire through my veins. "Let there be no doubt whose you are." He nipped my skin, a soft, toothless bite that was more a promise than a threat. Yet it sent a jolt of pure, unadulterated electricity through me. The Omega in my soul sighed, a sound of blissful surrender. It recognized this, it craved this, mine. The word was not spoken, but I felt it, a brand being seared directly onto my spirit. He straightened up, his hands falling away, leaving my skin burning and cold all at once. He stepped back, his expression once again an unreadable mask of control, but his golden eyes were molten, blazing with a possessive fire he couldn't quite conceal. The rest of the preparations were a blur. Marcus, ever the professional, directed me to a chair. He did my hair himself, his fingers surprisingly gentle as he swept it up into a simple, elegant twist that left my neck and the back of the dress exposed. He applied a bare minimum of makeup, just enough to hide the pallor of my skin and the dark circles of fear under my eyes. Through it all, I was a doll, pliant and silent, my mind reeling from Lucian's touch, from the feel of his lips against my skin. At 6:50, Marcus stepped back, his work complete. "They will be here in 10 minutes, Alpha." "Good," Lucian said. "Leave us." Marcus bowed his head once more and disappeared into the elevator as silently as he had arrived. The doors slid shut, and we were alone again. The silence was heavier now, charged with anticipation and the ghost of his touch. Lucian approached me. He circled me once, a predator inspecting its prize. His gaze lingered on the necklace, on the exposed skin of my neck. "The rules are simple," he said, his voice pulling me from my daze. "You will stand beside me. You will not speak unless I ask you a direct question. Your answers will be short. You are shy, overwhelmed, devoted. Do you understand?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. They will test you, he continued, his eyes locking with mine. They will look for weakness. They will scent you for lies. Do not let them see your fear. Your fear is mine to manage, not theirs to witness. Focus on me, look at me. Let them see that your world begins and ends with me. He was giving me armor. He was giving me a script. He was trying to build a fortress around my terror. They are old wolves, Alara. They believe in tradition. They believe in strength. And they believe that an alpha is only as strong as his Luna. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers cool against my heated skin. Tonight, you will be my strength. The weight of his words, of his expectation, was crushing. How could I, a broken, wolfless thing, be his strength? I was his greatest weakness, a lie waiting to be exposed. As if on cue, a deep, resonant chime echoed through the penthouse. The elders were here. My blood ran cold, my breath hitched. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, to hide, to disappear. Lucian's hand found the small of my back, a firm, warm pressure that was both a comfort and a command. It held me in place, anchoring me to him. It begins, he murmured, his voice a low, steadying presence beside my ear. He started walking toward the door, his hand guiding me, forcing me to move with him. The elevator doors slid open. 3 figures stood there, silhouetted against the light. They were ancient, their faces carved with the lines of 100 winters, their eyes holding the wisdom and cruelty of ages. The air filled with their scent, a dry, potent mix of old power, of dust and winter pine, and of sharp, pointed skepticism. Their collective gaze fell upon me, and I felt like an insect pinned under a microscope. It was a physical force, stripping me bare, searching for the lie. The silence in the penthouse was no longer empty. It was a living thing, thick with pressure and unspoken challenge. It pressed in on my eardrums, magnifying the frantic drumming of my own heart. The 3 elders were statues carved from ancient granite, their collective gaze a physical weight that threatened to buckle my knees. Lucian's hand on my back was the only thing holding me upright, a furnace of warmth against the chill of my terror. The one in the center, a woman with hair the color of spun silver braided in intricate, severe loops, took a single step forward. Her scent was the sharpest, a cold, clean fragrance of frost on pine needles and the dry dust of old scrolls. Her eyes, a pale, piercing gray, held no warmth, only the sharp, assessing glint of a hawk. This was the matriarch, the true power in this delegation. "Lucian," she said, her voice like the crackle of ice. She did not raise it, yet it cut through the room, demanding fealty. She inclined her head, a gesture of respect so minimal it was almost an insult. "You have been busy." "Kaelin," Lucian returned, his own voice a low, smooth rumble that absorbed the sharpness of hers. "Boren, Reese." He acknowledged the 2 males flanking her with a curt nod. One was broad and barrel-chested, his face a roadmap of old scars. The other was thin and wiry, his dark eyes missing nothing. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." His hand guided me forward, moving me with him as he gestured them further into the living space. It was a masterful display of control, forcing them to break their intimidating formation and follow his lead. "This is Alara, my mate." He said the words with such profound, unshakable certainty that for a fleeting second, I almost believed him. He was not presenting a lie. He was stating a fact of the universe. Kaelin's pale eyes remained fixed on me as she moved. The 3 of them didn't sit. They circled, a slow, predatory inspection. I felt their senses brush against me, probing, seeking. They were trying to read my scent, to decipher my lineage, my strength, the very nature of my wolf. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. This was it. They would find the emptiness inside me, the hollow place where a vibrant, living wolf should reside. They would find the fraud. I instinctively pressed closer to Lucian, a silent plea for protection. His hand tightened on my back, a firm, possessive pressure. And then I understood. The scent they were finding on me, the one that enveloped me like a shroud, was his. He had marked me so thoroughly with his own powerful alpha essence that it was all they could smell. My own faint, pathetic scent was drowned, buried beneath the overwhelming perfume of his claim. I was not a shifter with a weak wolf. In this moment, I was merely an extension of him, a vessel for his power. The realization was both a relief and a profound violation. "She is quiet," Boren, the scarred one, grunted. His voice was gravel and stone. "The bond is new. It has overwhelmed her," Lucian answered smoothly, not giving me a chance to even attempt a reply. His thumb drew a slow, deliberate circle on my back, a gesture of reassurance meant for their eyes, but the intimate touch sent a jolt straight through me. "She is not accustomed to our ways." "Indeed," Kaelin murmured, her sharp gaze sweeping over me from head to toe, lingering on the sapphire at my throat. "We can find no trace of her line, no pack scent we recognize. From where does she come, Alpha?" It was a trap, a direct question about a past he couldn't possibly know. My breath hitched. Lucian didn't hesitate. "She comes from nowhere you would know," he said, his voice dropping, taking on a tone of resonant gravity. "She was alone, lost. I did not find her in a pack, Kaelin. I found her in a storm. Fate brought her to my door." He was weaving a myth, a beautiful, romantic lie that was far more powerful than any fabricated lineage. He was framing me not as a weak omega from a forgotten pack, but as a destined gift from the universe itself. It was audacious. It was brilliant. Reese, the thin, observant one, spoke for the first time, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. "A lone wolf, unclaimed. It is irregular." "The fates are often irregular," Lucian countered, his voice like silk-wrapped steel. "My claim has regularized her position. She is Draven now. That is the only pack, the only line that matters." The sheer force of his will was a tangible presence in the room. He was not just defending me, he was daring them to question his judgment, his power. To question me was to question him, and none of them, not even the ancient Kaelin, seemed willing to take that final step. She turned her gaze back to me, and the pressure intensified tenfold. "The Alpha speaks for you, child," she said, her voice deceptively soft. "But Aluna must have a voice of her own. Tell me, what did you feel when the bond took hold? When his wolf claimed yours?" The world tilted. My throat closed up. This was a question only a true mate could answer. It was a question about the soul, about the joining of two wolves, about a magic I did not possess. There was no right answer, no lie I could craft that would sound like truth. My silence stretched, becoming a damning confession. The air grew thick with tension. I could feel the victory in Kaelin's scent, the cold satisfaction of a trap sprung. I looked desperately at Lucian, my eyes screaming the panic I couldn't voice. His face was a mask of calm, but I saw the fire in his golden eyes flare. He was not going to let me fall. His hand moved from my back, his arm sliding around my waist, pulling me firmly against his side. The sudden hard contact was a shock, his body a wall of unyielding strength. He tucked me into him as if I were the most precious thing in the world, a treasure to be sheltered. "My mate," he said, his voice a low, possessive growl that vibrated through my bones, "is not here for interrogation." He looked directly at Kaelin, his power rising to meet hers, an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. "Her feelings are a private matter between my wolf and hers. You are here tonight as elders to bear witness to my choice, not to question it." He was ending the conversation, drawing a line in the sand, but Kaelin was not so easily deterred. A slow, thin smile touched her lips. It was a smile that held no humor, only triumph. "Of course, Alpha," she said smoothly. "We would not dream of prying. We only wish to see the proof of this great fated bond you speak of, the proof that all true mates bear." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, heavy with poison. Show us the mark. My blood didn't just run cold. It evaporated. The mark, the bite, the permanent spiritual and physical seal of a mated pair. The one thing that could not be faked, could not be hidden, could not be lied about. It was the checkmate. I was exposed. The entire charade was about to come crashing down in flames. I felt a tremor go through me, a shudder of pure, unadulterated dread. Lucian's arm tightened around me, his fingers digging slightly into my waist. For the first time, I felt a flicker of something uncertain in him, a fractional hesitation. The game was over. Kaylin's smile widened. She had won. Then Lucien moved. It was not a sudden, violent action. It was a slow, deliberate, and utterly terrifying unfolding of intent. He turned me slightly, his free hand coming up to cup my jaw, forcing me to look at him. The world narrowed to the molten gold of his eyes. They were blazing now, filled with a primal fire that was part fury, part possession, and part something else I couldn't name. It was a look that stripped away the billionaire, the CEO, the alpha of the city, and left only the wolf. "Forgive me," he whispered, his voice a raw, guttural sound meant only for me. And then he lowered his head. I had no time to process, no time to react. My mind went blank with shock. He tilted my head to the side, exposing the sensitive flesh of my neck and shoulder. His lips, hot and firm, pressed against my skin. It was not a kiss. It was a preamble, a claiming. I saw Kaylin's eyes widen in stunned disbelief. He inhaled, a sharp, possessive breath against my skin, and I felt the shocking, painful scrape of his teeth. A cry caught in my throat. This was not the gentle, promising nip from before. This was real. This was a mark. Pain, white-hot and searing, exploded from the point of contact. It was a fire that spread through my veins, a lightning strike to my very soul. And under the agony, something else, a dizzying, terrifying pleasure, a feeling of being filled, of the empty void inside me suddenly being flooded with his raw, untamed power. My silent, sleeping wolf screamed, a shriek of both agony and ecstasy. For the first time in years, I felt it. I felt something. A gasp tore from my lips, loud in the silent room. My fingers clutched at the front of his shirt, my nails digging into the fine fabric. The world dissolved into a dizzying vortex of sensation. The pain of his teeth, the heat of his mouth, the intoxicating flood of his power, the scent of my own blood, coppery and sharp, mixing with his. He bit down not deep enough for a permanent mating, but hard enough to break the skin, hard enough to leave a scar, hard enough to be an undeniable, irrevocable mark of ownership. He held the bite for a long, searing moment, his growl a low, rumbling vibration against my throat. Then he released me. He licked the wound once, a rough, possessive swipe of his tongue that soothed the fire and sent a fresh wave of shivers through my entire body. He lifted his head, his lips stained with a trace of my blood. His golden eyes, now burning with a triumphant, feral light, met Kaylin's. "Is that proof enough for you?" he snarled. The room was utterly still. The elders stared, their ancient composure shattered. They had come to expose a lie. Instead, they had borne witness to a savage primal claiming. They had seen their alpha mark his mate before their very eyes, an act so possessive and dominant it left no room for doubt. I stood trembling in his arms, my hand flying to my neck. My fingertips came away sticky and red. The pain was already subsiding, replaced by a strange humming energy that pulsed from the wound, a warmth that spread through my chest. He hadn't just marked my skin. He had branded my soul with his lie. And the most terrifying part was, it felt like the truth. The soft chime of the elevator announcing the elder's departure was a sound of finality, a tolling bell for the life I once knew. The heavy silence they left behind was different. It was a vacuum, charged and volatile, waiting for the inevitable explosion. I stood frozen in the circle of Lucian's arms, my own hand pressed against my neck. The skin was slick and warm with my blood. The pain was a sharp, pulsing reality, a beacon in the fog of my shock. He released me. The sudden absence of his heat was a physical blow, and I staggered back a step, my legs threatening to give out. I stared at him, my mind a screaming void. The man before me was not the cold, calculating billionaire who had made a deal. This was a predator, his eyes still blazing with a feral, possessive light, his lips tainted with my blood. The mask was gone. I had seen the wolf. My fingers trembled against the wound. It was a messy, painful bite, a declaration carved into my flesh. It stung and throbbed, but underneath the pain, a strange alien warmth was spreading through my veins. A low hum of energy that felt like it was coming from him, not me. What? My voice was a raw, broken thing, torn from a throat that felt bruised from the inside out. What have you done? Lucian's chest rose and fell in a deep, controlled breath, as if he were reining in the beast that had just broken its chain. The molten gold in his eyes slowly cooled, banking like embers, but the fire was still there, just beneath the surface. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of something that might have been agitation. I did what was necessary, he said, his voice rougher than I'd ever heard it. I ended the argument. You bit me, I accused, the words sharp with a hysteria I couldn't contain. In front of them, like an animal. We are animals, Alara, he countered, his gaze hard and unwavering. They needed to see that. They needed to see a claim, not a negotiation. Kaelin was trying to break you, and through you, break me. I will not be broken. He spoke with a chilling pragmatism, but I saw something else flicker in his eyes. A shadow of something. He had been backed into a corner, and he had reacted with the most primal, irrefutable tool he possessed. He had marked his territory, and I was the territory. The thought was both terrifying and sickeningly, shamefully thrilling. The broken omega inside me, the part that had only ever known rejection, was still reeling from the sheer, overwhelming force of his claim. It didn't care about the lie. It only cared that the alpha had declared me his. This isn't real, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I felt dizzy, the room tilting slightly. This mark, it is real enough, he interrupted, taking a step toward me. I flinched back and he froze, a muscle tightening in his jaw. The sight of my fear seemed to anger him. It is not a true mating bond. That requires a depth I did not give it, a consent you did not offer. But it is a claim mark. It connects us on a surface level. It floods your system with my power, my scent. It will heal quickly, but it will scar. To any wolf who sees it, who scents it, it will be an undeniable sign that you belong to me. He was explaining the mechanics of my own violation. The coldness of it was a slap. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold my fractured pieces together. The humming under my skin intensified. A low-frequency vibration that seemed to attune itself to the steady, powerful rhythm of his heartbeat. I could feel him, not just with my eyes and ears, but with a new, terrifying sense that was opening up inside me. I could feel the iron control he was exerting over himself, the lingering aggression from his confrontation with the elders. He sighed, a low, frustrated sound. Come here. It was a command, not a request. When I didn't move, his eyes narrowed. Elara, now! My feet obeyed before my mind did. I took hesitant steps toward him, drawn by the sheer force of his will. I stopped a few feet away, unwilling to get any closer. He closed the distance himself, his presence overwhelming. He gently took my hand, pulling it away from the wound. His expression was grim as he examined his handiwork. It needs to be cleaned, he said, his voice softer now, a low murmur. He led me not to the bathroom, but to a panel in the wall that slid open to reveal a small, hidden bar with a sink. He took out a first aid kit, his movements precise and efficient. He wet a clean cloth, his back to me. Why? I asked the rigid line of his shoulders. Why go this far? For a business convenience? To quiet your bored? There had to be another way. He was silent for a long moment. He turned, the damp cloth in his hand. His golden eyes were dark, searching my face. When Kalen put you on the spot, he said slowly, deliberately, when I saw the absolute terror in your eyes, my wolf made a decision. It saw a threat to what it considers mine. It acted to eliminate that threat. He paused, his gaze intense. It was not a business decision, Alara. It was instinct. My breath hitched. He was admitting it wasn't entirely calculated, that some wild, uncontrollable part of him had taken over. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me, and it terrified me more than all his cold commands. He raised the cloth to my neck. This will sting. His touch was surprisingly gentle. His fingers splayed across my collarbone to steady me, his thumb resting in the hollow of my throat, right above the sapphire. The other hand carefully, methodically, cleaned the blood from the bite. The sting of the cool water on the broken skin was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the searing heat that his proximity ignited. I had to grip the edge of the counter to stay standing. My head was tilted back, my neck exposed, a position of ultimate submission. He was so close I could see the faint lines around his eyes, the dark ring around his irises that made the gold seem even brighter. He smelled of power, of clean soap, and now, faintly, of my own blood. It was a heady, intoxicating combination that made my senses swim. As he worked, the humming in my veins grew stronger. It was a current flowing from him to me, a river of power flooding the dry, barren wasteland of my soul. And for the first time, I felt a response from the other side, a flicker, a ghost of a sensation from my dormant wolf. It was like a numb limb slowly, painfully, beginning to wake up, a pinprick of feeling in the void. It wasn't a growl or a purr or anything so defined. It was just a presence, an acknowledgement. I am here, I gasped, my eyes widening. Lucian's hand stilled. He looked at me, his eyes sharp with question. What is it? I felt it, I whispered, the admission costing me everything. My wolf. His expression changed. The cold control vanished, replaced by a raw, naked intensity. He stared at me, his gaze dropping to the mark on my neck, as if seeing it for the first time. He had known the mark would link us, but he hadn't known this. He hadn't known it would stir the dead. How? He breathed, his voice a low, wondering sound. I don't know, I said, my voice trembling. It's just a feeling, a warmth. It's answering the energy from the bite. He finished cleaning the wound in silence, his movement still precise, but now charged with a new, potent awareness. He applied a clear, soothing salve that instantly cooled the burning ache, and then covered the mark with a small, sterile bandage, a flimsy piece of paper and plastic to cover a wound that felt soul-deep. He let me go, but his eyes never left my face. He looked at me as if I were a puzzle he had just realized was infinitely more complex than he had imagined. This changes things, he said, his voice flat. I know, I whispered. The old contract, the lie written in headlines, was ash. It had been burned away by the fire of his teeth. This was something new, something real and dangerous. This is no longer a temporary arrangement, he stated, crossing the space to stand before me once more. He crowded me, not touching me, but his presence was a cage. I will not have a wolf in the city bearing my mark, who is not entirely under my protection. This is no longer a role you are playing, Alara. It is who you are. You are mine. In every way that matters now. It was not a proposal. It was a vow, a sentence. My heart hammered. He was binding me to him, not with paper, but with blood. My blood. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely audible. Everything, he answered without hesitation. The word a raw, possessive thing. And nothing. I want your presence, your silence, your loyalty. I want the world to see you at my side and know that I am not alone, and in return. He reached out, his fingers tracing the edge of my jaw, a touch that was both a caress and a warning. I will give you a fortress, I will keep you safe. I will hunt down anyone who ever tries to harm you. I will give you this life, this world, and everything in it. All you have to do is accept it. All you have to do is stay." He was offering me the gilded cage again, but this time the door had a lock forged from his own bite. I thought of the cold streets, of the hunger, of the crushing, soul-destroying shame of being a cast-out, broken thing. I thought of the storm, and I looked at him, the eye of the storm, the predator who had marked me, and in doing so, had somehow sparked a flicker of life in the deadest part of my soul. The choice was no choice at all. It had been made the moment his teeth broke my skin. I met his blazing golden gaze, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I didn't have the strength to fight him, but perhaps I had just enough to survive him. I gave a single slow nod. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a king who had just won a war he hadn't even intended to fight. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear, his voice a low, final whisper that sealed my fate. "Good," he murmured, the word vibrating through me, through the new, fragile connection that now bound us together. "Because I would not have let you go." 1 year later. The snow fell in thick, silent flakes, blanketing the city of Ethel in a shroud of pristine white. From the penthouse window, the world below was hushed and beautiful. The harsh angles of the city softened into gentle curves. The frantic energy of the streets was muted, a distant hum beneath the peace of the snowfall. A year ago, I would have been down there, freezing, fighting for a scrap of warmth, invisible. Now I watched it all from a throne in the sky, wrapped in a cashmere robe that smelled faintly of him. I raised a hand to my neck, my fingers tracing the familiar silver lines of the scar. It was no longer a wound, but a part of me, a delicate tracery of fate that shimmered in the low light. It no longer hummed with a foreign energy. The power it held was now mine, woven into the fabric of my being. It had been the key that unlocked the cage of my silence. My wolf, once a dormant, terrified ghost, was now a constant, living presence within me. She was not a raging beast, not a powerful alpha wolf like Lucian's. She was quiet, watchful, a creature of moonlight and shadow, but she was mine. The mark had not created her, but it had awakened her, nourishing her with the steady, grounding power of an alpha's claim until she was strong enough to stand on her own. I had not shifted. The physical transformation was still a barrier my broken body could not cross, but the spiritual one was complete. I was no longer wolfless. I was whole. The elevator chimed, its soft arrival a familiar sound that sent a ripple of anticipation through me. I turned from the window as the doors slid open. Lucian stood there. He was dressed in a dark suit, flakes of snow melting on his broad shoulders. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than they had been that morning. He had been in a brutal, day-long negotiation with a rival pack from the north, a dispute over territory and resources that had threatened to boil over into open war. His golden eyes found me immediately, and the exhaustion fell away, replaced by that familiar, possessive fire that now felt less like a threat and more like home. He crossed the room in long, silent strides, his gaze never leaving mine. "It is done," he said, his voice a low rumble. He shed his suit jacket, tossing it onto a chair with a weary sigh. "And?" I asked softly, my voice clear and steady. The debilitating shyness, the frozen vocal cords, were a distant memory. I had found my voice in the quiet safety of his world. "They will honor our borders," he said, stopping before me. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. It was a gesture I now knew as well as my own heartbeat. "Your counsel was effective." Months ago, as he'd prepared for another tense meeting, I had noticed a detail in the treaty drafts he'd overlooked, a clause about mineral rights that contradicted an older, forgotten pact. I'd pointed it out hesitantly, expecting to be dismissed. Instead, he had listened with a focused intensity, his eyes sharp with a new kind of respect. He had used my observation to completely dismantle his opponent's argument. Since then, I had become his silent partner, his secret weapon. I saw the patterns he missed, the human details his wolf's eye view often overlooked. He was the sword, I was the stillness that sharpened the blade. "You are the one who faced them," I murmured, leaning into his touch. "But I carried your wisdom with me," he countered. His gaze dropped to my neck, to the scar his teeth had made. "They smelled you on my scent, Ilara. They smelled a settled alpha, a grounded pack. That is a strength no army can match." The lie had become the truth, not just to the world, but to us. Our arrangement, born of a storm and sealed in a desperate act of possession, had slowly, quietly transformed. The gilded cage had become a sanctuary. The contract had become a vow. The claim mark had deepened into a bond that was as real and unbreakable as any true mating. We were not mates in the way the elders understood it, a fated, explosive joining of two souls destined for each other. Ours was a quieter magic, a bond forged in shared silence, mutual protection, and a slow-growing, fiercely private love. He lowered his head, his forehead resting against mine. He inhaled deeply, breathing me in. "I am tired," he confessed, a vulnerability he showed to no one else. "I know," I whispered, my hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady, powerful beat of his heart. I could feel the tension draining from him, the iron walls of the alpha coming down now that he was home, with me. The silence between us was no longer empty or fearful. It was a language. It was where we lived, where we had found each other. In the quiet moments, away from the watching eyes of the board and the pack, we were not the alpha and his mysterious Luna. We were just Lucian and Ilara. He threaded his fingers through my hair, tilting my head back. His golden eyes searched mine, and in their depths, I no longer saw a predator. I saw my protector, my partner, my mate, in the only way that mattered. "It was supposed to be one night," he murmured, his voice a raw whisper against my lips, echoing the words that had started it all. "It was," I agreed softly, a smile touching my lips. "One night that has yet to end." He closed the small distance between us, and his kiss was not a claim or a command, but a homecoming. It was a kiss of profound gratitude, of deep, settled love, of two broken souls who had found their wholeness in each other. Outside, the snow continued to fall, bearing the old world and making all things new. The storm had passed long ago, and here, in the heart of the tower, in the arms of the wolf who had taken me in, I was finally, irrevocably, safe. I was home,